Flying units have at times been maligned in Total War Warhammer 3, but when used correctly, they can be quite strong. Take Pegasus Knights, for example. Here today, I'm going to be using them against my patron Coops, playing as the Dark Elves, and we're going to use them in the following way, mainly as an air superiority and mobility superiority unit, right? What do I mean by that? Well, obviously air superiority speaks for itself, but in terms of mobility superiority, we're talking just hit and run attacks against enemy light cavalry and other mobile units. So the idea here with this build is I've got a fairly well balanced Bretonnia build, a little bit lacking on traditional heavy cavalry, but we've got the 3 Pegasus Knights up in the air to act as a fast, hard-hitting vanguard force, a couple of mounted yeoman archers, including the Wardens of Montfort, Enchantress leading the way with Henri for a little bit of elite anti-large AP and some elite magic as well. Peasant mobs up front, second line of a couple of foot squires with a couple of battle pilgrims, just a mix. Foot squires, honestly, in hindsight, would probably be the best option, just to take like 3 or 4 of them. But also got some archers as well in case of hydras or cryptis or whatever other shenanigans Dark Elves have got going on. Coops is coming in with some high armor shenanigans with Malice and these Cold One Knights here. More Cold One Knights out on the other side, supported by some Dark Riders. He's got Dread Spears and Bleak Swords, and then a Charybdis. So anti-large AP, actually very good against Bretonnia with poison. Has missile resistance as well, I believe. Yeah, 35%, which is pretty considerable, but still will be somewhat vulnerable to those peasant archers focusing fire. So, seeing his build, we've also got the Cairns of Cain immediately getting caught by the eponymous Pegasus Knights, and that is going to be a brutal engagement here in the shadow of the mountain. I don't think Coops notices quite in time. He does hard land his harpies, though, into the Dark Riders, and the Cold One Knights here attempting to get my Pegasus Knights to drop down onto the ground, but for once, the kind of flying pathing bug helps me out there. On the other side, we're going to do a quick hit and run attack on these Dark Riders as well. So quick and fast, I almost missed it on the cast. You can see there the Dark Riders got broken very quickly, moved into screen with the Yeoman Archers, kind of sidestepped to block Coops' cavalry from getting at my own Pegasus Knights and trapping them on the ground. And now we're going to move away with the Yeoman back towards the front line, kind of take a defensive position out here in the open to a degree. Cold One Knights did move off, though, and unfortunately for the Cairns of Cain there, the Pegasus Knights were able to break them, get back up into the air, and now drop a little rear charge on these Dark Riders. So the idea here is with the Charybdis on the field, I know I need to protect my archers. It's going to be my only real way of dealing with it. Don't really have a good way of dealing with Malice other than army losses, so I'm just going to try and trap and ignore him for the most part. But in order to protect these archers, that's why I'm kind of disrupting Coops' cavalry advance here, and just in general trying to do hit-and-run attacks on his own light attack units, which, granted, Pegasus Knights are one of the few units in the game that actually have the speed to pull that off. 105 speed does mean that, and that anti-large bonus, too, with high charge, means they can get in and break enemy light cavalry very quickly. Almost missed that, too, as well. In the front line there, Coops a little bit over-blobbing. Drop a Comet on his front line there and just blast a bunch of those Bleak Swords. Charybdis kind of comes back a little bit out of range of my archers, which is a good call while he tries to get around with these Dark Riders, but Pegasus Knights successful on many fronts are keeping the Cairns at bay, intercept those Dark Riders there as well. On the other side, Dwellers below used to great effect here to just shred the cavalry of the Dark Elves as they're kind of blobbed up on those peasant mobs as well. So Enchantress already netting some incredible value there. Almost missed all of it because it all happened so fast, but there you go. Almost 1,400 value already on her, or more than 1,400, I should say. Yeah, we're going to see some Flaming Sword of Ruin there as those Bleak Swords try and cut through some Battle Pilgrims. Enchantress also just holding the Charybdis in place in the front line, offering up some high-value bait, if you will, as the giant multi-headed fish thing takes all the arrows, 100 arrows for each head, I think is what's in order to take that thing down. That said, though, Dark Elves now with Murderous Prowess active, making a big push on their right flank. Malice, of course, just an absolute force of nature, collapsing a whole bunch of units here, routing off peasant mobs and whatnot. For myself, the archers staying online. A few of them have been compromised. Some nice burning heads from Coops there as well. You may have seen. Manages to break off a couple of my archers. Going to get them back from route and bring them back in. But another nice burning head there to debuff the leadership of these units. Hopefully get them offline. I'm going to throw kind of a preemptive Dwellers here. I saw these two units running forward, and I figured we could also do a little bit of single target damage on Malice and the Charybdis here. But ends up being pretty rough. Henri gets seriously beaten up, and he will be able to escape here, but certainly has taken a lot of damage. Going to be mostly ineffective. We'll have to be very careful about how I use him. These two Pegasus Knights over here as well, I kind of lost track of them momentarily, but while they initially got a really good engagement on those Cold One Knights, in sustained combat, the Cold One Knights end up doing very well, but still, Cold One Knights over on this far side coming back from route after that nasty Dwellers getting in here, trying to push on my back line. Thankfully for me, the Wardens are able to hold with kind of the other Yeomen, mobs, and archers all in a big blob there, holding together. Pegasus Knights sweep out, and we're going to mostly use them at this point to break routing units and just kind of support all over the battlefield. We've dealt with the Charybdis, so that's one kind of main high-value target done. Most of the Dark Elf cavalry is getting dragged down. There's still a few units here fighting in the center, but I figure I have the numbers here to finish them off, so at this point my priority is just to clean everything up and try and isolate Malice and just kind of wear him down in the late game. The Charybdis eventually goes down there in the distance to some archers who are coming back from route. Enchantress and the Foot Squires cleaning up those Corsairs. Pegasus Knights taking significant damage, two of them at least. The third unit is still quite healthy, but they've done their job of killing the Dark Riders and the Karens and also supporting here. If we look at the value of the two that are fairly beat up, 781's okay. We would have liked to have seen maybe a little bit more. This one, though, has paid for itself at 1128, so really not too much to say. A little bit of Earthblood there to heal them and keep their models online. A little bit of archer fire too here. Like I said, these Cold One Knights, Dark Riders, wasn't too worried about them. Just I've got so much overwhelming numbers here. Even though they are having leadership issues, they'll just continue to contribute those light hits and be death by 1,000 cuts. We're going to throw a little Favor of the Fae on these Foot Squires as they fight Malice. They're up to 66 melee attack. Still not that great of weapon strength, so I mean 35's okay, certainly. Definitely not bad with 26 AP, but still not that great of a surround. And at this point, 6 minutes into the battle, I'm feeling pretty comfortable with the battlefield situation. I'm still not sure if I'm 100% going to be able to kill Malice. It'll take some time. But in a situation like this, you don't want to just all-in blob with all of your units, right? So what I'm going to do is kind of not necessarily feed my units one by one, but just, you know, not all at the same time. You know, we'll move in a couple together, kind of in support of each other, and especially cycle charging with these Pegasus Knights. I mean, certainly almost called him Malekith. And all Dark Elves are the same. No, I'm just kidding. No, Malice, he's very fast, obviously. 68 speed's pretty good, but not anywhere close to the Pegasus Knights, and although the Pegasus Knights are exhausted, he is as well, so speed debuff-wise, they should still be far ahead of him and able to cycle charge effectively. Speaking of cycle charging, Henri also going to come in here, so this is what I mean. I'm not over-blobbing, because if I were to move in like my peasant mobs, my archers and stuff, you know, or the yeomen, it would actually be blocking my more important damage dealer units from actually getting into contact with Malice and the sorceress here, right? So although it might seem a little bit counterintuitive not to deploy all of your units at the same time, it is a common mistake for newer players to make, to kind of over-blob in this type of a situation. Not to mention, Malice can transform into Zarkan and pop his big area of effect damage ability, which will significantly damage, especially lower model count units like these Pegasus Knights, but still, as long as I'm playing smart. Also, you know, once my Pegasus Knights route, I don't immediately blob in. I give my archers a little bit of opportunity to fire. If I really wanted to play this, you know, MLG full-on tournament sweat style, I would probably just continuously kite with all my units and use up all of the ammunition on these peasant arrows, or as much as I possibly could. But at this point, I feel like I honestly probably don't need to. If I can just army loss Malice like very quickly before the Zarkan transformation goes off. If Koops doesn't pop it quickly, and I'm able to do quite a bit of shock damage, we could potentially actually win this. So I move in with Henri, favor of the Fae on him, so he's up to 85 melee attack, plus his bonus versus large, little bit of burning head in the back line there, but that means it's not going to be hitting these units in the front line. And Henri comes in with the Pegasi. We're able to just smash. So the Fey Enchantress just kills the Sorcerer outright, and you can see there that Koops had pressed the transform, but just barely didn't get it off in time. I think had he transformed, Zarkan might have carried there in the late game. It's definitely possible. I mean, for myself, really this one unit of Pegasus Knights is kind of what's holding a lot of my value together, but at the same time, I'm still not sure because, I mean, legally, according to tournament rules, given that I still had the archers there, I could have tried to kite Malice out a little bit. And, I mean, granted, he just charges down those archers and routes them, and then I'm forced to engage in melee. But even still, I could probably just feed units piecemeal and run around until his timer runs down to a significant degree, and then maybe charge in the late game, finish him off. Certainly hard to say, but it is one of those things, I mean, in terms of timing of abilities, it is good to wait with Malice as long as possible to transform into Zarkan, but at the same time, you also don't want to wait too long, as we saw there. But interesting game, a fun one for sure, and I have to say I'm quite happy with how the Pegasus Knights performed here. Granted, I didn't have to face like Scourge Runners, which I thought they could potentially be a soft counter for. I'm not sure if they would potentially just die to the Scourge Runners' shooting attacks even after they caught them, but they certainly do have the speed and the positional capability to catch the Scourge Runners. Probably didn't have enough support to go, like if Koops had gone with a lot of Scourge Runners and Cold One Knights and Cavalry, you know, Dark Riders to support them, that might have been pretty problematic for me to deal with, but in that case, would have just tried to play off my infantry and stay a little bit closer there, but definitely an interesting matchup. Malice is hard to deal with for a lot of factions, but I do think that he suffers from the typical Tank Lord syndrome, which is he ends up getting isolated. He can carry the game, potentially, but if he doesn't, then you just lose, right? Similar to something like Sigvald or Vlad. I mean, he does have the benefit of mobility, which puts him in a way above those other two, although Sigvald's perfect vigor and Vlad's magic would have something to say about that, but let's not get into that discussion for now. In terms of army damage value, Fey Enchantress did a great job with her own magics, and support there managed to stay alive and also do a little bit of fighting in melee, which is great. Didn't get most of this value from draining either. It's all from active magics like the Dwellers Below and the Comet drop. Pegasus Knights, like I said, very happy with their performance. Henri got beat up pretty bad, but was able to come into late game, get a little bit of healing, and get some work done as well. Yeoman Archers are generally a nice unit to have in your arsenal. I also have to say, pretty happy with how the Foot Squires performed, all things considered. I mean, one of them literally fought Malice for a while and did all right. The other one fought some Black Ark Corsairs and did a decent job. Pilgrims also, their leadership is nice to have in a late game situation like that. And, of course, the Archers, not returning a crazy amount of value, but tactically doing enough to deal with the Charybdis alongside the Yeoman there. And then Peasant Mobs, anytime they get over 100 value, is just fantastic. For Koops here, other than overblobbing a little bit in the front line, maybe some slight compositional changes in terms of taking maybe a couple more spears instead of the bleak swords. Not really too much to say there. It's definitely an interesting build. You are relying on Malice and the Charybdis quite a bit to get the work done, and the Charybdis is a little bit risky. Right now, it might be more worth it to bring the Hydra, simply because the Hydra's rebirth, I think, always procs. That might get changed in the update. But right now, I believe all units with rebirths proc 100% of the time. So Hell Pits, Hydras, Phoenixes. That does mean that the Hydra here would have gotten a lot of healing and probably would have continued to fight. Not to mention the breath attacks are great for thinning out archers or other infantry. So even though the anti-large and poison makes the Charybdis an attractive choice, it might have been better to just take the Hydra here. Hard to say. But let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Definitely a fun one. If you like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification button. Every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again. See you next time.